After their exhaustive review of the evidence, the grand jury deliberated over 2 days, making their final decision. They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
They heard the evidence, questioned the witnesses, heard from the cop, and then made their call. Did the Ferguson shooting grand jury get it right from what we now know? Let's welcome to MidPoint, member of the Philadelphia Bar Association and the Pennsylvania Trial Lawyers Association, defense lawyer and former prosecutor George Parry joins us today. George, thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
From what you heard, from what you've been able to read to this point, in your opinion, did the grand jury get it right based on the evidence?
Yes, the physical evidence, the results of the autopsy report in particular, and the DNA and blood evidence at the scene fully support Officer Wilson's version of events, that his use of deadly force was fully justified.
Did you hear or have you read of anything that you saw in his testimony at this time that would indicate a discrepancy of any sort that might impact the decision?
No, not at all. I mean, he tells a very consistent story, and his story, as I've indicated, is fully supported by the physical evidence. They found a contact gunshot wound to the decedent's right hand. They found the decedent's blood and DNA on Officer Wilson's gun. They found the blood and DNA on his uniform, and they found it in the interior of the patrol car. All of that indicates that there was a struggle in the patrol car, just as Officer Wilson said. And Officer Wilson then said that after firing that shot, the decedent left the car and Wilson pursued him. The decedent turned around and ran at him, and Officer Wilson had to fire again. And the pattern of wounds indicates that all of the entrance wounds were to the front side of the decedent. One of the entrance wounds was on what they call the dorsal aspect of the right arm, meaning that the decedent's hands were not up, but at least the right arm was down. And the shots, the fatal shot, was to the very crown of the decedent's head. And the medical examiner concluded that given the height of the decedent, he had to have his face parallel to the ground as if he were about to make a football tackle on Officer Wilson. And that's what Officer Wilson said was happening, that the decedent was running at him with his head down when Wilson fired the fatal shot.
What did you take from the officer himself, Darren Wilson, who testified the grand jury had it, where he said he was scared? There are some people who are saying there's no reason for a police officer to be scared in a situation like this. But certainly you would have to imagine that if you are in a vehicle, if you are strapped in, there is a moment of fear no matter who you are.
There's a great deal of fear, and he had every reason to be scared. You know, television has misled people into thinking that once you shoot someone with a firearm, that person goes down. I've handled scores and scores of cases where people have been shot in the heart, have been shot in the brain. They've been able to run for 3 and 4 blocks and continue inflicting harm well after they've been shot. So it's not like you wave a magic wand and the person who's been hit by the bullet goes down. And this is a perfect example of the fact that you can shoot someone again and again and again, and they can continue to keep coming. You have a decedent here who is 6 feet 4 inches tall and 300 pounds who had attacked the police officer. Of course he was scared.
I have about 30 seconds left here, but so let me ask you this with regard to the case itself. From what you've seen and heard, is there any reason for you to believe that there would be a case here for civil rights violations or for a civil jury to now undertake?
No, not at all, but I'm sure there will be such a case filed.
Would you then suggest that at this point, if you were a prosecuting attorney, say, that's it, let's let this go?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And look, I think the DA made the right call here. He's trying to say that it was the grand jury's call, but the fact of the matter is a grand jury's pretty much going to do whatever the prosecutor tells them to do. he made the right call. The grand jury made the right call. There's no basis for bringing any kind of criminal charge against Officer Wilson.
And it is the legalese that we first and foremost have to look at. George Parry, we thank you so much for your time. We'll look forward to doing it again. And please have a good holiday.
You too.
All right. Other side of the break, the human side of the Ferguson decision, on the ground and experiencing the protests and telling it like it is later.